Welcome to Centre Court with thanks to OMF. Kick back and relax with an adjustable bed from Australian designed and owned OMF. Watch sport your way and, of course, Cobram Estate, Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil, grown, harvested and first cold pressed in northern Victoria. I'm Bianca Chatfield, and for our final show, Maddie Brown is alongside me. Maddie, can you believe it? We are down to the final three teams, and what a big weekend it was.
Oh, it was a huge weekend, B, and I don't think anyone expected maybe the results in that first game, or definitely not the deficit. But you know what? I think we've still got the three best teams ready to fight it out, or at least the last two to fight it out to get to Adelaide. But no, I'm excited. It's been a whirlwind on this show, but I think we've covered a lot.
I know, we sure have. Well, let's get into the OMF overview. Watch sport your way straight away to take a look at that major and minor semi-final. Let's see the results to start with. I mean, an enormous win. I don't even know how much you can wrap up the Adelaide Thunderbirds for what they did against the Melbourne Vixens in that major semi-final, but a 25-point win. They were phenomenal all across this court. We'll get to the Vixens a bit later. And then for the Fever, at home, hosting the Lightning. The Lightning tried their hardest to use the super shot to their advantage, but the inaccuracy really cost the Lightning, and the Fever really, they were at their clinical best. They did what they needed to do. They got the win. And two standout players across the round, Shamira, Sterling, Humphrey. Wasn't she phenomenal, Mads?
Oh.
I mean, I'm in awe just being able to sit back and watch her. She's brilliant across the court.
And you look at those, 8 rebounds, 5 intercepts, 14 gains. All of that is like, that final line of defence. She really generates so much. And we've talked about, she said, I had more weapons to pull out in season 2024. And boy, has she. She can get the high ball, the low ball, the one that's just like bang in the middle. She's getting up her rebound. She's keeping the ball in and out. She's a barometer down that defence end for the Thunderbirds, and they continue to show that they are really hard to play attack against.
And for the West Coast Fever, a standout player was their wing attack, Alice Teague-Neal. 25 goal assists, 43 feeds and 14 centre pass received. She is somebody that the Vixens are going to really have to shut down. What a phenomenal performer she's been, as with Kelsey Brown in that midcourt.
Yeah, I thought Shanice Beckford was a little bit slow and a bit costly with the ball early days, but I think when Brown came on, just that controlled link from defence to attack, she definitely obviously helped Alice Teague-Neal, I think, control the ball, and that connection between the goalers started to form, and then all of a sudden they just kept chipping away, and the deficit came out. The pressure, as you said, was put on the Lightning, but we've seen that a lot this season. When you have to shoot the 2-point shot, you actually, players haven't been able to do it. So, you want to win that 1-point netball, which both teams on the weekend showed that 1-point netball, traditional netball, is still very much alive.
And just to wrap up that game, Fowler Nemard on fire. Huge amount of goals to her name. She is going to be unstoppable. You can't help but feel it. She's going to be unstoppable in these final series. It's now time to talk about the Melbourne Vixens, and we have Hannah Mundy joining us at the desk. Hannah, thanks for joining us on Centre Court.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I know you probably don't want to delve too much into what happened, but can you tell us how you're feeling now, and are you excited to take the court again this weekend?
Yeah, obviously a really disappointing game for us and almost quite embarrassing, but I think what we have really focused on this week is just parking that and really focusing on Fever, and we are really excited to play our netball and go back to our strengths.
Did you watch any footage of your own games or been given any homework to go, all right, review, as you said, park it, but then move on? How have you analysed your own performances and the team performance?
Yeah, I think everyone individually kind of targets that element pretty differently. So for me, I went back and watched it because I'm a pretty visual learner. But I think we don't want to dwell on it too much because we know that's not us. So I think this week we've focused on our games prior against Fever and, been told to kind of pick out some individual bits that we thought we played well in those games.
And we've both been coached by Simone McInnes as well. What has she been like this week? Because I imagine it's a really fine line, how hard you go, how hard you push each other, and then how much you also wrap your arms around each other and support each other through, what was a hard weekend to get through.
Yeah, I think it is a finals game, so we kind of can't dwell on it too much, but we did have a pretty hard training session yesterday. Probably one of the hardest of the year, but it was kind of needed, I think. And, you know, Simone has so much passion and really wants the best for us. So she knows just as much as we do how that wasn't us and how disappointing it was. So for her, we are just focusing on the weekend. But yeah, we definitely paid for it yesterday.
Any extra activities? Because last week we spoke to Matilda Garrett and she said, oh, we're doing dress-ups and we're doing bits and pieces. Is there anything that you guys are doing as a team to kind of unite yourselves and go, you know what? You know, it's do or die this weekend. To make sure there's no stone unturned, really.
Yeah, I think we do have a really good dynamic off court and do kind of organically do stuff outside of netball. But went out for lunch yesterday after a hard training session, had a debrief. So it is really nice to know that we're all in it together. And, you know, I think it is that connectiveness, if that's a word, as a team will get us the success that we want.
And so then turning our attention to this weekend against the West Coast Fever, being able to play Fever at home at John Cain Arena, it's such a fortress for the Vixens. You got to experience it in another way with all the Thunderbird supporters last weekend, but how excited are you to play in front of your fans?
Yeah, it's the best feeling. I think we have the best fans in the league, probably biased, but I think so. I think it is kind of a blessing that we do get to play at home. That's why we did it. One more game in front of our fans, but no, I think it is really exciting playing Fever. We know that they're playing a really good clinical style of netball, so it'll be a really good game.
What have you focused on, say, like in the attack end, to get back to that winning form that you did against them early, like the first time you played them over there, won by 11? How do you get back to that, or what does it look like? So we're like, oh yeah, Vixens are on today on the weekend.
Yeah, I think we went back and went over that first game because I think that's when we did display our style and our dynamic game, and we had a lot of variety in every kind of way, like our centre passes, the goaling load. So I think for us it is going back to our strengths and knowing that individually we can beat our players and having the tools in our toolkit to kind of combat whatever is thrown at us.
Now, we know you love your netty. Did you watch the minor semi-final, and how did you think that was going to play out the way it did, or did you think the Lightning could have come through that one?
Yeah, I did watch the netty at Sophie Garvin's actually on the couch. No, it was a really good game. At halftime, obviously, it was pretty close, and both teams were playing really good netball, and I think obviously Fever blew it out in the end, but yeah, I think they played really well and they played to their strengths. Obviously the super shot was in play and stuff like that, but yeah, I think in the end they showed their composure and their experience.
And how have you summed up the season so far? I mean, hopefully 2 more games for you guys, but it's kind of been a bit of a standout season for you. You've had more minutes, more time out there to kind of really show everyone what you're capable of. How have you found the season evolve for you personally?
Yeah, I think it started obviously low, missed the first 2 games, and that was really hard for me. I think had such a good pre-season and was really excited to get out there, and then when that happened, it was sort of like, oh, why me? But then, you know, that middle chunk of the season has been really good. I think the combinations have been building, and I think I'm discovering things about myself and kind of really owning my strengths out there. I think it's really hard to play bad with the combinations that you have out there. It's basically playing with you know, diamonds, obviously. So yeah, I think it's been good, but I think it doesn't really matter about the past now. It's about kind of what happens in these next few games.
And talking about the diamonds, we obviously know there's going to be the test matches that are coming up against England and also the Constellation Cup as well. So for you, what does it look like going into your first squad camp? When does all of that happen once the Super Netball's over?
Yeah, I'm just keen to get in there and be amongst all the girls. It's, you know, I had a bit of a taste last year going into camp, and it's such a good environment to be in, and I think you are just soaking in everything. It's cliche, but I'm like a sponge when I'm in that environment. So yeah, I think not focusing too much about selection and that kind of stuff. I think I'm just super grateful to be there.
Well, obviously your Vixens teammates who are in the Diamonds, you know them well, but what were some of the players in that Diamonds camp that you were like, wow, how cool to be on court with them?
All of them, I think. Yeah, at camp last year, I guess starting that connection with Sophie was fun. And I think playing with the likes of Jamie and obviously played with Liz before, it is a really exciting kind of mid-court partnership to start. And I think everyone in that environment is obviously really elite. So it's hard to kind of stand out, which it's such an intense environment to be in, which is awesome.
Well, we hope that we see your name in that team in the near future. Thank you so much for joining us, Han, and all the best for the weekend.
Thank you.
That was the OMF overview. Kick back and relax with an adjustable bed from Australian design and owned OMF. Watch sport your way. And for one last time in season 2024, it's now time for Maddie's Minute. Maddie, take it away.
Well, I thought, B, we should just wrap up season 2024 and talk about some of the positives and the highlights that we've had. We've had some new faces on our screen, some debutants that have absolutely shone. We've had milestone games from 50th to 100th, 150th, a 400th in there for Julie Fitz as well. That's also milestones for umpires, players, and obviously those coaches. We've had milestone stats. 75 goals to Fowler Nemard in one single game, 300 intercepts to a Sterling Humphrey. There's been Super Netball's reserve competition unfold in front of us. New Melbourne Derby, whatever you want to call it. New win, obviously, for the first win in franchise history for the Melbourne Mavericks. We've had close finishes, clutch moments. There's been extra times galore than we've seen before. New sister combination in the Ariang sisters, which I'm excited to see. Retirements, we've seen Chelsea Pittman and obviously Kim Rebellion obviously retire from the game as well. There may be some more, who knows. There's also been record-breaking attendance and viewership throughout the whole, and we've even seen the inclusion round, the First Nations round, and also the standing against violence against women, continuing the sport pushing to be, supporting causes bigger than our game. I think it's been a great season. It's been an up and down season at times, but there's been so many positives and great things to celebrate. So I think, you know what? Bring on the last two games and let's celebrate some more positives within Suncorp Super Netball.
A big tick to season 2024 from Maddie Brown. All right, well, there is 2 games to go. There is one this weekend. Let's preview the preliminary final, which is between the Melbourne Vixens and the West Coast Fever. Of course, this is at home at John Cain Arena for the Vixens. It's a hard one. When you talk about this game, you can't help but think about the mental pressure that is on the Vixens. I mean, we had Hannah Mundy on before. They've said they've been able to park it and then move on. They've had a hard training session. But, Maddie, if you can put your playing hat back on, how do you think that the Vixens will be feeling about this? And how do they put aside all of that stuff from last week and be able to take on a Fever who are in great form?
I think, like Hannah mentioned, you've got to look at your previous performances. You've got to actually go back and kind of do a highlights reel on yourself and go,
Yes.
what am I so good at? How have I dominated, some of these opponents previously? The first time they faced each other, Vixens won by 11. Second time, they only lost by 1. So they've been in the mix against the Fever. We've done some stats. The Fever don't do so well at John Cain Arena. They've won only 2 out of 7 encounters.
Yes, that's right.
So they've lost 5. So, you'd go in with lots of positives, and I think you have to draw on that for the Vixens. On the flip side, Fever looked like they have really found their starting 7. They brought their impact players. They impacted perfectly in the right moments. It's going to be hard because they are like tails lifted. And I think also too, Fever finished 3rd. They've had that win at home. They've got nothing to lose. As you said, the mental load of even being at John Cain Arena, you go, yes, we've got our fans, but the pressure of having your fans, the pressure of being at home. So,
yes.
yeah, I think they have to park it, and I think they have to look at some highlight reels of themselves and go, you know what, we are good. Let's get back to the Vixens at the start.
A player for the West Coast Fever who, we've seen come on in leaps and bounds this season is Katie-Ann Dehaney. I think, you see the Jamaicans in fine form across other teams in their defensive end. I think Vixens have to be really careful of Katie-Ann Dehaney. She is flying at the shot. She's putting so much pressure on it. She runs from everywhere to make sure her hands are over the shot. You really hope the Vixen shooters can find some way to protect each other to be able to get their shots off. Because if they get their confidence in early, start the game off early, I think start the game off well, it'll put them in good stead to take on the Fever. But the Fever have been very good, I think, in all areas of the court this season.
Well, they also dominate that 1-point netball, the Fever. That's what they're really good at, is that first 10 minutes. They're not known for their super shot. Vixens do have that power to shoot, but you don't want to leave it up to that because we've seen obviously teams, even Lightning on the weekend, when they had to shoot it, they just couldn't absorb that pressure. So you have to be within kind of sniffing range of, that first 10 minutes of the quarter, I think, for the Vixens. Garvin and Austin are probably the big keys, I think, for me. And you talk about Dehaney. I think Fran Williams is the reason why she's been playing. She's huge, but she has to play against an Austin who is the barometer you've mentioned before down that attack end. So that is a really close kind of matchup, I think, where the game could be won and lost because there's plenty over the whole court, but I think that could really make or break either side.
Yeah, it's getting exciting. Well, it's now, actually, let's take a look at this. This is the finals tree, how these teams have ended up here. Of course, the Thunderbirds straight through to that grand final, which they obviously, it was pre-arranged. Yes. They get to have that at home at the entertainment centre, and really, I mean, they deserved it in the end.
Yeah.
They, it might have been a thing already decided, but it's great to see that they would have got it anyway in Adelaide. It's now time to get to Social Scoop, and the question I've got for you, Maddie, is actually along those same lines. Now, this week we have a question from Jessica. Thank you for sending it in, Jess. She asked, with crowds the biggest they've ever been, should we be selling the rights to the grand final location? It's worked out this year, but what about for the future years that have, for the fans that support their teams all year, they can't afford to travel to the grand final. If their team earns the right in that major semi-final in the win, do you think we should go back to being able to host whoever wins that major semi-final?
I mean, it's a hard one. I think at first, when we first sold it off, it came as such a shock, but then you could see the investment and I can understand why, because they want to make it that real festival of netball.
Showcase.
Yeah, and I think, yes, you might not be able to afford it, but if you know early on, and it was very early in the first part of the season, you can actually put those things in place. You can get your flights, you can get your accommodation sorted, and they really want to build kind of that atmosphere around. I think it's great to be able to showcase different states and different towns as well. But you see the record numbers and you go, Adelaide Entertainment Centre only holds 9,000.
Yeah.
We could be having it 15,000 stadium, maybe at RAC, or we could be having it at a John Cain Arena, 10,000 plus. You go, are we missing out on that by taking it away? So it's a bit of a, I don't know, I think it's like the chicken and the egg. Which one kind of works best? I like it at the moment, but I do understand, especially with the cost of living, it is hard, and it would be great to obviously have the fans of the home side that have earned the right to be there.
Definitely. And I mean, as a former players, there was nothing better than being able to earn the right to host it and then have the 2 weeks getting excited about a home grand final because you did the hard work and got yourself in that position. There's nothing better than that, and being able to enjoy those moments with your fans. But I think what they can now do, Netball Australia, around the game, because they can plan for it. Last year we saw over 800 people in a luncheon.
Yes.
Just outside of John Cain Arena. That could all be arranged and organised because we knew exactly where the grand final was going to be, and it was all sold out.
Yep.
And I think that adds another layer that it's pretty exciting for our sport to see.
It's more so these two teams that play this weekend. You're like, don't I get tickets? I mean, on a personal level, I'm like, am I getting in my car and driving 8 hours? I don't know at this moment.
Yep.
So, this weekend, these two teams, this is probably the hardest one. But yeah, I think the model's good at the moment. Let's see whether we can obviously recuperate some of those negative funds.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you to all for being a part of Social Scoop this year and sending in all of your great questions. We have loved reading them. Well, it's time for the good oil, thanks to Cobram Estate Australia's extra virgin olive oil. And joining us all the way from Paris is SEN netball commentator Hannah Mundy. Han, welcome. What's happening over in Paris?
A big bonjour to you all. What is happening is the largest sporting event that we know of, the Olympics. And unfortunately, the netball coverage is slim from over here, but I've been keeping my eyes on everything and I'm ready for that 2032 entrance.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we know you're always keeping an eye on what's happening. You always know behind the scenes all the goss, but what do you want to focus on for the good oil this week?
So I want to cast your mind back all the way to 2 weeks ago when we last saw the Vixens and the Fever matchup. Of course, this was what I'm going to coin the Lily Graham match. She had an absolute ripper, given that she's played 25 minutes up till that point all season. And then she came off with an absolute flyer. I think the form of Sophie Garvin was a little up and down. And in the end, both goalers produced the same output of 17 goals. So I'm really curious to see a few things, what both teams do differently this time around. Of course, when they played in round 13, it was the Fever who took out the win 68-67. So just a 1-goal difference. And I'm not sure if it's going to be a 1-goal difference this time around. I think the first thing that's really interesting for me is how these two teams decide to start. Of course, they're starting sevens. Last time around, you recall, it was Kate Eddy's first game back. She jumped in the wing defence bib. Jo Weston started goal defence and Rudy Ellis goalkeeper, which left M. Mannix on the bench. For the Fever, interestingly enough, Jess Anstis was given the start in centre over Kelsey Brown, which has become a similar theme the last couple of weeks, with Kelsey starting on the bench and then coming into wing attack or centre. Last week, Kelsey Brown, when she was off in that first quarter, that was the quarter that the Fever lost. So I do want to take the opportunity to ask you both, particularly Mads, how do you see maybe the Vixens starting 7? And maybe, Maddie, what do you reckon is going to happen with the Fever? Are they going to still play with that lineup, given that seems like the quarters that Kelsey is off, sometimes they lose them?
Well, look, I think Dan Ryan has been tinkering with this for a while, and to be honest, I do know that the role that Kelsey was offered, to even go over and play in the West was that impact role. So I think it's probably what we're seeing at the moment is what we were expecting from the start, but due to illnesses and injuries in the off season or the pre-season, that shift happened. I think he should start with Jess Anstis in the centre. I think that is obviously a combination that's steady for the Fever. They get their big defenders on. I think Kelsey provides a better impact. I don't think if she's on the court, do you get that same impact with other players? I mentioned to you as well, I think the Fran Williams in the starting 7 changes things as well. And my biggest move for Dan would be obviously Alice Teague-Neal to goal attack. So I think he'll start as is. But I do expect, last time you mentioned Han, Kelsey didn't play, obviously. Yeah. I think he'll use definitely that at least 8 to 9 players potentially, obviously this weekend.
Yeah, and with the Vixens, it's a tricky one because what worked for them and what they didn't have a choice about was playing a starting 7 and not really using their bench in the first, 10, 11 rounds. And they were only occasionally going to their bench. And then obviously everything changed. Players started to come back and they made some more changes. And I felt like Simone almost felt like she had to keep up with the other top teams and be moving players around in all sorts of positions. I think for the Vixens to channel their best, I think they have to have a 7 that they stick with for a while and let them grind it out. And it's hard when things aren't working to say that, obviously. We couldn't see that on the weekend play out. But I really want to see Kate Eddy on the court. I want to see her probably in that wing defence position. I know Jo Weston has done really well on Teague-Neal before in that combination against each other. But I really think they're better off having Eddy on at wing defence. They're better off having Jo Weston on at goal defence. And if you're going to make a change, be that Ellis or Mannix on at goalkeeper.
I totally agree. I think Weston to wing defence is your impact. Ellis to goalkeeper is your impact.
Yes.
So start with your tried and tested kind of thing, and then use those people as they've got greater impact than obviously starting. I reckon.
Yes. What do you reckon, Hannah? Do we know anything? Is that what you reckon?
We don't know anything.
No, I think you ladies are bringing up some really interesting points. I think for me, the interesting part will be reacting to especially what the Vixens goalers decide to produce. Of course, last time these two teams played, Sophie Garvin didn't have her best match, and I think Katie Ann Dehaney for the Fever had a really awesome impact. Curiously, since then, Sophie actually had her lowest output all season last week with 15 goals in 45 minutes. But then you look to her other goalers and they both finished with negative miss and net points. Yeah. Austin with 12 goals in 45, Lily Graham 9 goals in just under a half. So I guess for me, the interesting point of view is maybe not necessarily what happens with the starting 7s, but what happens next, and how do the Vixens goalers in particular stand up under what is a lot of pressure? It's do or die netball, and how do they go about that?
Well,
maybe the...
I was just going to say, like, goalers, doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter what team there are, if these goalers have international experience and we've seen them dominate at a World Cup, they have to be able to bring their best to this game. I don't think they can rely on anybody else bringing them into the game. I don't think they can, Simone, should have to make a change. Mm-hmm. They've really got to come and play the moment and have that fire in their belly and do what we've seen that they can do under all sorts of pressure. It shouldn't matter who their opposition is. Might sound harsh, but I think that's exactly how they've got to show up to this game.
And the other point too, B, to make is I think, if they have been a little bit low on supply, it's that relentless defensive pressure. They have to get gained ball. And I think being that one-on-one on Shanice Beckford, not sagging off. Janelle's never getting any shorter. It is still going to go into her. Put the pressure up early. Give more supply and volume to the Vixens goalers. So then if they are missing, they're still getting that supply.
Just be fearless. Take the shots. If you miss, it's okay. More supply coming back. Exactly. That's what I reckon we need to see from the Vixens to be able to take on the Fever at their best as well.
Ultimately, I think it's going to come down to the clash in game styles. We see the Vixens, they're so scrupulous with ball. They're very careful about getting to circle edge and providing a quality supply, whilst I think the Fever, they've got the best goaler in the world. You can bomb it up from the transverse line and chances are she's going to rip it in and get it up. So I think it's about taking your opportunities, and specifically for the Vixens last time when the Fever applied a wall, so tried to slow down that flow. I actually think Fever were quite effective in doing so. So not saying that the Vixens need to throw out the game plan, because we know when they're patient, no one can stop them.
Yes.
But I do think it's a question of supply, demand, all those economic principles. How much ball are you getting down there? And I think both teams just need to be really mindful of the style of defence being applied. And as you said, can you stop both teams up early, so therefore the ball can't get to the goalers in a quality fashion? I think that'll be the question of the day.
Well, I'm not going to let you go without your tip. And we know you're in Paris for a couple of weeks. This is our last show on Centre Court. I want your tip for the prelim and your tip for the grand final.
Two easy choices for me. Will I live to regret those words? It'll be the Fever this weekend, but the T-Birds taking it out.
Oh, I love your work. Thank you so much, Hannah, for joining us all the way from Paris. We hope you have the best time at the Olympics, and we've loved having you on Centre Court this year.
Been my pleasure, ladies. All the best for the weekend.
Well, that was the good oil, thanks to Cobram Estate, Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil, grown, harvested and first cold pressed in northern Victoria. Maddie, that's the end of Centre Court for season 2024. Of course, I've loved sitting beside you each week and being able to analyse everything. And who's your tip to take it out?
Well, I think the grand final will be Adelaide and Fever, and my head and heart say two different things, but I'm going to say the Fever.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I'm going to say I think the Adelaide Thunderbirds are going to be too good for everybody come grand final day. Thank you to OMF, Watch Sport Your Way, and Cobram Estate, Australian extra virgin olive oil, for supporting Centre Court all year. Thanks to all of our crew behind the scenes, and thank you for watching. We'll be back again next season.